Fantastic. So I'm getting faster because it's not quite 7 o'clock. So we really like to start right on time. There it is, 7 o'clock. Now we can get started. So welcome everybody to another ASEA Global Expansion Team Zoom. We have the amazing Lee Osler as our special guest tonight. And I know you're expecting to hear all this science come out of Dr. Osler's mouth. And we're going to do something a little bit different tonight, because what we know about ASEA is that ASEA helps your cells communicate. And when your cells are communicating properly, the body protects the healthy cells, makes an attempt to repair the unhealthy cells. And if the unhealthy cells can't be repaired, then they are killed off, apoptosis, and replaced with healthy cells. That's all you need to know, that ASEA helps your cells talk. And when your cellular communication improves, your body can do what it's designed to do, which is heal itself at the cellular level. So welcome, Lee Osler, to the call tonight.
Thank you, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be with you and your group.
Fantastic. Well, tell everybody what I heard you say recently, which is you've been writing books and explaining science and talking about redox and being on the medical professional board, and that's your wheelhouse. But something happened to you recently that really turned the lights on. So let's talk about you finding your why, your motivation for doing this as a business.
Well, I'm happy to share that. And please, if I'm not going where you want this or think it ought to go, you just interrupt and re-cue me. But 2 or 3 months ago, my sponsor, Dr. Maureen Hayes, challenged me to discover my cause. You know, we were kind of debating or discussing that general topic in the group, and she just said, "What is your cause? What's moving you?" And yes, I am writing a book presently. It'll soon be out on the business side of all things. There's not much science in it. It's just a business approach, thinking through the economy and side hustles and what's happening to us in this recession and so forth. And I started to ask a question to myself that I've actually asked myself several times. That's why am I doing this? You know, what is your why? And in preparing and writing in this book, I came across a great author, Simon Sinek, who talks about start with why. And I've read it before, and it just kind of all came together for me. Sometimes the timing has to be right, and your frame of reference has to be refreshed, I guess. And he made the comment that everything has to start with why. And so it was like the second or third, interjection of Maureen talking. Here's this author talking about it, and I'm actually asking myself, like, so I got the science down. I know the help. I'm out there talking to people and my patients and so forth about the benefits that come from cellular health. But really, why am I doing this? And coincidentally, about that time, I had reacquainted myself, or it had come across my path again, some information from a fellow by the name of Tim Ballard, who runs the Operation Underground Railroad. And I already knew, that he was, or has at least been in the past, been affiliated with our own charitable arm, the Advancing Life arm with ASEA as a charitable cause. And maybe I'll come back to that in just a few minutes. But as I listened to him, I remembered something that I've said to myself for probably 2 decades. This has just been in the back of my brain, motivating more than just what our current project is. And that is, if I ever had a cause, if there was any hill that I would die on, if there was anything that could get me to walk across broken glass, or as I say, across a tightrope, from one tall building to the other into a burning building on the other side. It's like, if there was anything that could get me to do that, it would have something to do with children. It would have something to do with, family integrity and so forth. And I listened to Tim talk about his operations where he would go out and rescue, and he describes, and there's many videos on YouTube and elsewhere where with him being interviewed, he's a very public figure, and he's very open about what Operation Underground Railroad is all about. But he contexted this, and this is kind of where he's personally evolved in his own thinking, is that what we're looking at with regard to trafficking, if you will, is really more about slavery. It's about children being, sold into bondage, if you will, and that's their purpose. And he talked about a couple of examples. In 2010, there was an earthquake in Haiti where they were not formally organized. They were just doing kind of ad hoc missions, as it were, and they really weren't set up in Haiti or really anywhere except maybe domestically, or for doing these operations where they could go and rescue people. Well, he was working on a case at the time where a pastor's son, I think it was 9 years old or something, was kidnapped from the church parking lot. As I could get I may not have all the facts exactly correct, but because the child was a U.S. citizen, his background in Homeland Security, would allow him to pursue that because he was a U.S. citizen. Well, he's now private. He's not constrained by any of these rules, but at the time that was the case. And so when the earthquake hit, what they found is when they went in is that the traffickers will descend on locations of natural disaster or war scenes or whatever, and they call it harvest time. They're in there scooping up the kids. These new orphans that are created when all the people die. And they would be so bold and brazen as to spray paint the word orphanage on the side of abandoned buildings, so that people who didn't know different, who wound up rescuing kids out of the rubble or whatever, that didn't have parents anymore, would take them to these quote unquote orphanages, and these traffickers were there posing as the real thing, and then selling them internationally to traffickers. Well, they did an operation and went in and rescued a couple dozen people. They knew that this boy was in that group, but not when they showed up to do the rescue. He wasn't there. So fast forward, Ukraine happens, and Russia starts taking advantage of what's going on in Ukraine. But this time, because of the work of Advancing Life, because of what ASEA had done in their donations to the OUR organization, they had set up in advance a position, an operation or a base, I should say, in Ukraine, so that when February of 22, when the first invasions happened and they were bombing these cities, and these new orphans were created, they were ready to go. And you can get online and watch YouTube videos recounting that story. But they went in and they did it immediately. I mean, because they were now geared up and they were equipped, and they had an advanced, kind of like a forward operating base, as it were, in Ukraine, and they were able to take thousands of kids out of there. They still were many more, but they were able to significantly work their operation and save these kids. And I got to thinking about that. It's like, isn't that interesting that the company that we're affiliated with set them up in a way in Ukraine ahead of the war, such that they had an operating base, a headquarters, as it were, to operate from when this occurred. They've similarly set up mobile forensic units in southern Idaho, and they train dogs that sniff electronic devices where pedophiles will hide illegal content as they're doing their thing, and those dogs are being used by police forces around the country, actually around the world, to find these people who are illicitly involved in child trafficking and pedophilia and so forth. And I thought, what, this is just fascinating to me, because that's my cause. That's something for 2 decades, even before any of this came about. It was like, that's the hill I would die on. And I started to think that through, and as an aside, since my first introduction to ASEA and the big meetings, where I watch the story being told of what Advancing Life does in terms of water, in terms of women in other countries and the advantages or disadvantages that they might have. And then obviously with this child rescue, child trafficking thing, I've always sat on the back of this kind of thinking, that's really cool. I like that, that really speaks a lot, but I never saw myself being involved in it because my paradigm was that was for the rich ASEA people. Of course, they can donate and give generously because they're earning generously. And someday when I'm there, of course, I would do the same thing, right? Well, the way this folds together for me is back to your, what is your why? Yes, I'm in this to help people with their health. It's blessed my life in that regard and my wife's life in that regard. But I think there's an underused element to this that I'll bet, I don't know, I'm just going on a limb saying I'll bet 90% of the people in ASEA, I'm going to call them the rank and file associates, maybe haven't thought through well enough that this can be their cause if this is something, and I'm not here to say that this is the only cause, but if it were, and if you decided that that could be a hill that you could die on as well, and it's like, no one could fault you at all for defending children and rescuing children and so forth. That's just that crosses all boundaries. It crosses all barriers. It crosses all languages. It doesn't really matter. But if that is it, then I should be doing something with that opportunity. And again, I don't want to reduce this to money, but one of the comments that Simon Sinek said in his Start With Why is our why should be something that isn't about money. It should be the fire in your belly. It's like, what is it that gets you going? What is it that, again, you would walk across broken glass or across the high, strung tension high wire? What is it that you would do? And most of the things, and this I'm speaking for me, certainly if I were living in a cardboard box or a tent under a highway overpass, I'm destitute. It's like, things related to money or the things that money could buy would be a significant motivator for me because I would want to change my condition. But again, I don't think that describes, 95, 98% of us, even though we may have some destitute situations going on. But when push comes to shove, this is something for me that just lights my fire. And it allows me to be able to say, yes, I'm going to donate to advancing life, even if it's $5, even if it's $50, even if it's only 100 or 200, just whatever, I call it the widow's mite. Even if that's all I can do, I can now, quote unquote, and again, I don't mean this in a monetary sense, I mean it as a personal investment of self, but I can buy into the conversation that this is who I am. This is my cause. And not only that, ASEA will double my money. They'll match that gift and they'll make what I'm doing even, more advantageous. So my point in that is to say that your why ought to be, in my view, something that isn't about money or things that money can buy. That's a side issue. And in fact, Simon Sinek calls it a byproduct. Your why, what drives you out of bed in the morning, what keeps you going, should be something that is at your core. This is the fire in your belly. Even like if this wasn't about a side hustle or not, that you would still do this. And it's just nice that you can do a side hustle because now I have access, because I also want to multiply myself. So I've got local charities now who do aftercare. It's not just about rescuing what's going on out there and doing the operations and arresting the perpetrators. It's once these kids are rescued, whether this is an international thing or right here in my own community, there's aftercare. There's the counseling, there's the feed them, the clothe them, the do the therapy, to get them back integrated into society and to overcome all of their wounds. And so I can now move into my local community and work with agencies and ministries, and there's a number of them in my community to choose from. I think that's true in every community if you look for them. I can now affiliate with them and make a widow's mite or more donation to them as well, and volunteer. And guess what? When I go to those meetings and now be a part of that, I have a whole new audience. I can now talk about why I am doing this. I have a side hustle. I'm not here to proselytize my side hustle, but my side hustle is what allows me to make double on my donation. And it creates opportunities to share what we're doing with ASEA from a health point of view to a new audience. And so as I've kind of processed that down, there's all of these different dots that start to connect for me, because that's the why. And when I start to, we all have weak moments, from day to day, week to week, whatever, where it's like we're not as motivated, we're not as, gung ho, and we have to resort in times like that to kind of some chest thumping, sing a loud song or jump up and down, change our state, talk to somebody else, and kind of increase the energy, and because I need to go talk to somebody and risk being rejected. I need to talk to other people and have 9 out of 10 people tell me I'm crazy or whatever, the conversation in our brain. For me now, I can say that what I'm doing with ASEA is, yes, it's about help. And again, I can talk circles around anybody about that, and I probably do too much of that. But it's like now I have this core fire in my belly, the thing that would cause me to overcome. And I just have to stop and think about what's the real reason I have decided to do this, because this is bigger than money. It's bigger. And again, it's counterintuitive. And that's, I'll just keep going here unless you interrupt. But this,
I was just going to say, it is counterintuitive to a point. But I remember going to a workshop in a network. It was a network marketing workshop. And this gentleman was asking me, Cindy, what motivates you? And it's a hard question to answer. And I know you struggled with it for a while. But he said, okay, this is when the Twin Towers existed. Okay. His example was, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a rebar, an I-bar, I think he calls it, an I-bar, and I'm going to stretch it from one twin tower to the other twin tower. And I want you to shimmy across it. I'm going to put $100 on the other end of the I-bar. You're going to do it? No way. Okay, I'm going to put $1,000. No way. I'm going to put $1 million. No way. I'm going to put $10 million. No way. I am not going across the I-bar. Okay, now I'm going to take your child and I'm going to put your child on the other end of that I-bar. And the only way you can get to your child is crossing the I-bar. Are you going? In a heartbeat? In a heartbeat.
And that's the principle. Now, obviously that example, and even the ones, I really wouldn't enjoy walking across glass, but I think we all understand what that metaphor is about. And that is to say, what is it that would cause you to not quit? What is it what is the fire in your belly? And for me, it's not about money. This came about because in that conversation about what is your cause, what is the cause worth dying over, shimmying across the I-bar. The question becomes, I just lost my train of thought. The question becomes, what is it that's going to cause you to do that no matter what? And for me, in putting together a dream board, a vision board, because we put that up so we can look at it every day and be inspired. And I've been asked the question, a dozen times, like, do you have a vision board? Do you have a dream board? What have you got on your dream board? I've never made one, because just to me, and I'm not speaking for anybody else's values, to me, it's phony. It's artificial. I can clip out pictures from magazines of cars and homes and beach vacations. I could do that but for me, that doesn't motivate me. That's the That's the $1 million at the other end of the I bar that I'm pretty sure I'd land on the street and with a cracked skull, and be dead.
Let me
I
just tweak that a tiny bit, because I have been making vision boards for 24 years now. And it's not of cars and homes and.
But this is my point. I think there's a difference between a dream board and a vision board. And in my mind, that's going to be, and yes, and they're two different boards. Would I like a new car? Of course I would. If a new car dropped in my lap, would I tell them to take it back? It's like, no, but it's not the kind of thing, that's like the $100 at the other end of the I bar. It's like, I'm not going to change my behaviors or my routines, for that. Why? Because I already have a car. Maybe if I was destitute and I was walking, that might be a motivator for a while. But after I had the car, I wouldn't be motivated anymore. It'd be done, right? So my point in this, and again, this is just me. It's not a value judgment for anybody. Those kinds of things, which is basically money or the things that money can buy, those go on a dream board, and that's fine. But that doesn't motivate me personally. Because I think that if I needed a new car, I'd just go get one anyway.
So what's a vision board?
So a vision board is the gut. That is the fire in your belly. That's the cause I would die for. That is the children. That's my vision. And so now I can incorporate a vision because even after I had a car or I had a lot of money, my vision wouldn't necessarily be altered. If anything, I might add to it. I can stack, but I'm not going to say, well, I don't care about kids anymore now that I have a new car. And so my vision is something that's higher. And back to the next level idea. Think about what we're being taught from the top. Tyler laid out for us, and I go back to this, I think it's brilliant. This idea of why we are different. We don't do network marketing, we do next level marketing. And that is counterintuitive. We talk about become, not income. We talk about all of these things that nobody else is really doing because this is an ethos. This is integrity. And I think, and this is me, that when we play the next level strategy, I'll call it strategy, but hopefully it's not just a tactic or a ploy. Hopefully it's what we really believe and become and belong, because it's entered our heart, it's part of our gut. This is counterintuitive. When you talk to people who want to get you to do what they're doing, they're selling you, they're trying to convince you, they want to be convincing, they want to show up, and with that interest thing, they're not about being interesting, they're just interested. They're interested in what I can give them. And if we come at this with this next level thought process, this paradigm, this is counterintuitive. It's disarming. It's magnetic. It's attractive because it's more than just the product that I have. The product will get addressed. The health will get addressed. If we talk about my reasons for doing this, I'll tell you an example. I was getting my hair cut this last week, and the lady asked me, what I was doing. They love the chit chat, right? And I said, well, I'm just finishing up a book. And she goes, oh, what's the book about? And I said, well, it's about side hustles. She goes, side hustles, huh? That's interesting, side hustles. And it started a conversation. I didn't say one word about ASEA or science or anything. But we had an interesting 5-minute conversation about the rule of 72, about what an asset equivalent was, about the fact that she's 51 and doesn't have any money put aside. And she was suddenly really interested. And I hadn't even told her about ASEA yet. Imagine now when she goes look at ASEA, she'll go, oh, it's like the dots all connect. I kind of sold her twice at once. But it isn't about selling. It's about, and again, the point is, it's not the product I'm selling, it's me. You're buying me before you buy ASEA if I'm playing at the next level, because I show up with this genuineness, because this is a fire in my belly. And now they're not looking at me, hopefully, as someone who's trying to score on them at their disadvantage, at their cost.
Yeah, I've had people look at me and say, "Oh, Cindy, making money off misery, making money off of people's misery." And that makes me so angry because that's not what I'm doing. The thing, but the thing is, you can make $1 million in your lifetime, and most people do. So, making $1 million is not that big a deal. But, if you condense the time that it takes you to make $1 million, you could make it in, you could make it in 20 years. Well, what if you made $1 million in 10 years? Or what if you made $1 million in 5 years? Or what if you made $1 million in 1 year? And so, yes, we're talking about money, but now that you're making more than you need for yourself and your family, what will you do with that extra money? That becomes the question. And when you have a cause like you've discovered, like saving the children from human trafficking, now you have excess money where you can make choices that can truly change the world. You've got the boring stuff out of the way. You've paid your car payment, you've paid your house payment, you've bought groceries, you've paid for your electricity, you've gotten your hair cut, you've got some clothes to wear. Now life can get interesting, because now with this extra money, you can be a philanthropist. You can make a difference in the lives of other people.
Let me just comment that with just a slight modification, and
We
that
have
is
4 minutes till the end of the call.
because everything you're saying is true. But now I can go in. What if I only gave, I'm just going to use 5 minutes. What if I just had $5 a month? What if that was all I could afford because I wasn't making, all this extra money? Because I'm doing that, I'm now invested in this whole thing. I can actually not have to wait until I have money, right? The excess money. I can actually do it now, and I can claim that as a next level thing. I can tell people I am working a side hustle. What do? I'm working a side hustle that's helping to support children and the rescue of children. Oh, well, tell me more. And it's like suddenly you've got this open thing. Well, what's the side hustle? And it just opens the door. That's at least what I'm finding.
Absolutely. Well, here comes the other question. Because Ruddy Buck, who's Bo's father, has always taught me, if you serve the masses, you'll eat with the classes. If you serve the classes, you'll eat with the masses. So what's more powerful, one person giving $1 million to Operation Underground Railroad, or 1 million people giving $1 to Operation Underground Railroad? 1 million people giving $1 to Operation Underground Railroad is far more powerful than one person giving $1 million to Operation Underground Railroad. And there is what we're doing. That is why network marketing is so powerful, because even though Operation Underground Railroad is not going to be every single person's cause, it happens to be your cause. It happens to be one of my causes. However, it's not going to be what lights the fire in everyone, right? But
so find your cause.
What if this, find your cause? And this is the question, and we are at the bottom of the half hour. This is the question. What if everyone in the world, or a large majority, so let's just say the 80-20 rule, let's just say instead of 80% of the people being broke, living paycheck to paycheck, what if they got on the other side of the Robert Kiyosaki quadrant, worked on the business principle and the investing principle instead of the employee principle and the self-employed principle? So they took that money where, 80% of the money isn't, but let's just say it, let's just switch it. More people were doing network marketing. So instead of 80% of the money being on the business side of the quadrant and the investor side of the quadrant, and 20% of the money being on the self-employed and the employee side of the quadrant, what if we switch that? What if we got, the stats there are that 80% of the people are on the left side of the quadrant and 80% of the money is on the right side of the quadrant. So the game is to get more people over to the right side of the quadrant. So how do we do that? And the answer is network marketing in my book, because it doesn't take a lot to get started, right? So
that's right.
Now if you have the 80% of the people on the right side of the quadrant, the question becomes, what would the world be like if 80% of the people were philanthropists? Imagine how the world would be different.
Well, until that happens, my challenge to everybody listening to this would be go to advancinglife.com and set up a monthly thing. Whether it's $5 or 20 or 50 or 100, you get to decide. And watch what that does to how you think about this. Because, I mean, you could actually say, yeah, I'm involved in charity. Why don't you go? You could tell other people, go to Advancing Life and you enroll. I don't think you have to be an ASEA person to go to Advancing Life and become a donor. So get them to do it, and they will double your money, number one. And think of the doors open, because I found this principle when I was involved in sexual assault recovery charities. I did this 10 years ago. I found, and we don't have time to get into the big, I did an extreme makeover contest because I'm a clinical instructor for cosmetic dentistry. So we did that extreme makeover locally. And when we wrapped a charity around us, it was a sexual assault response center. It opened the media doors, radio interviews, TV interviews, newspaper interviews. I could walk into almost any business anywhere and talk about this promotion that we were doing, because, in large part, because we had this charity that was involved with us. So if you do that and just get your foot in the game and watch what it does to your thinking and how it drives it from a dream board to a vision board, and then take that where you want. You can choose whatever vision and whatever fire in the belly you want. But now you've got a different conversation going on in here as well as with other people.
Yeah. And you're living your life on purpose, and you're working your business on purpose,
Exactly.
as opposed to trying to work just for money or to make some rank or, whatever. Who cares if you're called a flaming tomato and making $100,000 a month if you're not living your life and building your business on purpose, right?
All of that is the byproduct. And it doesn't, you don't have to be afraid, well, it'll never happen if I don't focus on money, money, money. That's going to happen. But it's not phony, and it's not artificial, and it's not like get all excited. I'm not saying there's not a role for that, but we're talking about what would get you to walk on glass or cross the I-beam.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Lee Osler, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you, everything that you've done for ASEA, all the books that you've written, all the science you've done, how much backbone and integrity you have. And now that you've had a cause, now that you have found your why, look out, world. Lee Osler's on fire.
Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Have a good night, everybody. Good night.